Hello, everyone. My name is Yaman, and I provide daily updates on Tesla, markets, and technology. Let's get started. Markets are mixed today. Dow Jones is up 0.5%, Nasdaq is flat, S&P 500 is up 0.2%, Russell 2000 up 0.7%. Heat map, you can see that software application companies are down quite a bit and information technology services are down. Nvidia is flat, Apple is flat, Tesla is up 3%, and a couple other Mac 7 companies are down slightly. Let's continue with our daily article. S&P 500 Nasdaq slip as investors eye trade talks. Delta Air soars. S&P 500 and Nasdaq nudged lower on Thursday as investors monitor developments around U.S. President Trump's trade policies, while airline stocks jumped following Delta's upbeat forecast. Delta Airlines jumped 13% after forecasting third quarter and full year profits above Wall Street estimates. Markets are bracing for a flurry of second quarter earnings set to kick off in full force next week. Investors need some validation from corporate earnings to continue to justify the valuations, a wealth manager said. However, markets are in wait and see mode with the tariff announcements. That's probably paused investors from the strong buying spree. 9 of 11 major sectors were trading in green, with technology and communication services being only draggers. EV manufacturer Tesla, however, jumped 3% amid conversations around its next annual shareholder meeting. Trump announced on Wednesday a new 50% tariff on copper to start on August 1 and threatened a 50% tariff on exports to the US from Brazil. He also issued tariff notices to 7 minor trading partners. Yet, several countries are still waiting for official word from the White House, with investors closely monitoring the evolving trade negotiations. Meanwhile, Nvidia leaped to $4 trillion valuation on Wednesday, making it the first company to ever hit that mark. Minutes from Federal Reserve's June meeting showed most officials said they expect rate cuts will be appropriate later this year, with price shocks from Trump's import tax expected to be temporary or modest. Let's continue. Dig into the Trump says U.S. to impose 50% tariff on copper imports, copper futures jump. President Trump said he will announce a 50% tariff on copper on Tuesday, hoping to boost U.S. production of a metal critical to electric vehicles, military hardware, and power grid, and many consumer goods. U.S. COMEX copper futures jumped more than 12% to a record high after Trump announced the planned tariffs, which came earlier than the industry had expected, and the rate was steeper. Trump told reporters at a White House cabinet meeting that he planned to make the copper tariff announcement later in the day, but he did not say when the tariff would take effect. I believe the tariff on copper we're going to make 50%, Trump said. After Trump spoke, U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick said in an interview on CNBC that the copper tariffs would likely be put in place by the end of July or August 1. He said Trump would post details on his Truth social media account sometime on Tuesday. Trump had yet to formally announce the tariffs by Wednesday evening, and several countries, mining companies, and trade groups said they were awaiting firm details. Analysts said they expect short-term volatility in copper prices and shares of copper companies should the tariff be implemented. In February, the administration announced a so-called Section 232 investigation into U.S. imports of the red metal. The deadline for the investigation to conclude was November, but Lutnick said the review was already complete. The idea is to bring copper home, bring copper production home, bring the ability to make copper, which is key to industrial sector back home in America, Lutnick said. The National Mining Association declined to comment, saying it preferred to wait until the details were released. The American Critical Minerals Association did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Copper is used for construction, transportation, electronics, and many other industries. The U.S. imports roughly half of its copper needs each year, and only 3 copper smelters. Major copper mining projects across the U.S. have faced strong opposition in recent years due to a variety of reasons, including Rio Tinto and BHP's Resolution Copper Project in Arizona and Northern Dynasty Minerals' Pebble Mine Project in Alaska. Shares of the world's largest copper producer, Phoenix-based Freeport-McMoRan, shot up more than 5% at one point in Tuesday trading. The company said, which produced 1.26 billion pounds of copper in the U.S. last year, did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Freeport, which would benefit from U.S. copper tariffs but worries that the duties would hurt the global economy, has advised Trump to focus on boosting U.S. copper production. Countries said to be most affected by any new U.S. copper tariff would be in Chile, Canada, and Mexico, which were top suppliers to the U.S. of refined copper, copper alloys, and copper products in 2024, according to U.S. Census Bureau data. Chile, Canada, and Peru, three of the largest copper suppliers to the U.S., have told the administration that imports from their countries do not threaten U.S. interests and should not face tariffs. All three have free trade deals with the U.S. Mexico's economy ministry and Canada's finance ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comments. Chile's mining ministry declined to comment. Chairman Mexico Pacheco Codelco, the country's top copper miner, told Reuters the company wanted to know which copper products would be included and if the tariff would hit all countries. All right, this is enough on copper. Tesla to hold annual shareholder meeting in November as investor scrutiny mounts. Tesla will hold its annual shareholder meeting on November 6th, it said on Thursday, a day after a group of investors urged the Elon Musk-led automakers to set a date, citing legal obligations. The company, which held its last meeting in June 2024, has been grappling with a series of events, such as Musk's public feud with President Trump, ending of EV tax credits, and a slump in sales due to aging vehicle lineup, raising investor concerns. Tesla shares are down 38% since hitting a record high in December, with the company now looking to pivot to self-driving technologies for future growth. But as Musk clashed with Trump over the tax cut and spending bill and launched America Party, investors worry his political ambitions could harm Tesla, whose shares have underperformed the so-called Magnificent Seven this year. Tesla shares rose about more than 3% early trading as the board set July 31 as the new deadline for the submissions of shareholder proposals to be included in the proxy statement. The company was close to missing a deadline under the Texas law, which allows investors to seek legal option in case a company fails to hold a shareholder meeting within 13 months of holding a previous one. Tesla had in April said it would file its annual proxy statement later than expected, and that the board had formed a special committee to consider some compensation matters involving Musk. In last year's meeting, shareholders had approved Musk's controversial $56 billion compensation package despite a Delaware court ruling that had previously voided it. Meanwhile, Musk is pushing to deepen the integration across his companies as the Grok chatbot, developed by the billionaire's XAI startup, will be available in Tesla vehicles next week at the latest, according to Elon. Grok integration suggests to formalize ties between Tesla and XAI. The proxy may contain more details on this topic, Piper Sandler said. Separately, Linda Yaccarino, CEO of social media platform X, resigned in a surprise move, adding to a growing list of executives at Musk companies to step down. On a positive note, Waymo Teen accounts offer peace of mind for Phoenix families. Waymo Teen accounts available to teens ages 14 to 17 in Metro Phoenix allow independent travel when linked to a parent or guardian's account. The program offers safety protocols, including rider support agents and real-time trip sharing, providing peace of mind for families. Waymo Teen accounts aim to alleviate transportation burdens for parents and offer teens greater autonomy. So you don't have to have a license to ride Waymo as a teenager. U.S. used car prices surge as tariffs drive market volatility. The Manheim Used Vehicle Value Index rose 1.6% in June and 6.3% annually, driven by ongoing volatility from Trump's other tariffs. While price pressures typically ease in the second half of the year, retail vehicle sales remain strong and the supply of used cars is decreasing, potentially supporting higher prices. Fed officials are cautious about inflation, with some considering interest rate cuts as early as July. That's not going to happen. Warren wants Trump's FTC to see if companies are using tariffs as cover for price gouging. Senator Warren, Elizabeth Warren, and 15 other Democratic lawmakers are renewing a call for an investigation this week into whether tariff-enabled price gouging is set to impact consumers in the years ahead as President Trump's trade moves continue to ripple through the U.S. economy. I'm not going to read this article, just the headline. Solid U.S. job growth masks a loss of labor market momentum. U.S. job growth was unexpectedly solid in June, but nearly half of the increase in non-farm payrolls came from the government sector. We already discussed that. Fed minutes show little support for interest rate cut later this month. Only a couple of officials at the Federal Reserve's June 17-18 meeting said they felt interest rates could be reduced as soon as this month, with most policymakers remaining worried about inflation pressure they expect to come from the President Trump's use of tariffs to reshape global trade. Trump has demanded immediate steep cuts and called Chair Powell to resign. The minutes released on Wednesday, however, showed only a narrow support for a near-term reduction in borrowing costs among the Fed's 19 policymakers, with some of them feeling no rate cut would be needed at all. Most participants at the Fed's meeting last month anticipated rate cuts would be appropriate later this year, with any price shock from tariffs expected to be temporary or modest, the minutes said. There was no indication that any policymaker felt the U.S. Central Bank's benchmark overnight rate, currently in the 4.25% range, should be cut by several percentage points as Trump wants. Several policymakers indeed felt the current policy rate may not be far above the neutral level, at which economic activity is neither stimulated nor restricted. And previously published policymaker forecasts show even the most dovish of the 19 U.S. central bankers see less than a percentage point of cuts this year, and no more than another percentage point in 2026. Despite what they characterized as considerable uncertainty over the exact inflationary effects of tariffs, the minutes underscore the lack of urgency to cut rates anytime soon. Priscilla, senior economist at BMO Capital Markets, wrote in a note. The central bank's policy setting FOMC last month voted unanimously to leave the rates unchanged. All right. I think this is pretty much what we expected and discussed before. 3 company-specific news today. Delta Air expects profit boost betting on capacity cost controls. Delta Airlines forecasts a brighter profit outlook for the coming quarters due to stabilizing bookings and industry-wide capacity discipline. The company expects capacity cuts to boost pricing power in the second half of the year and is also implementing cost control measures. Delta's diversified revenue streams, including premium travel and loyalty programs, have helped mitigate the impact of weak main cabin demand. Huawei seeks AI chip deals in Middle East, Southeast Asia, Bloomberg News reports. Huawei is attempting to export AI chips to Middle East and Southeast Asia, targeting markets dominated by NVIDIA. The company is offering its older generation Ascend 910B chips to potential customers in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Thailand, though no deals have been finalized. And finally, JP Morgan CEO says markets underprice the risk of higher interest rates. JP Morgan Chase Jamie Dimon said on Thursday he thought the market was underestimating the possibility of U.S. interest rates climbing higher, a possibility he described as a cause for concern. I think the possibility of those higher rates is higher than anybody else. The market is pricing a 20% chance. I would price it at 40 to 50% chance, Dimon told an event at Ireland's foreign ministry. I would put that as a cause for concern. Dimon also said that he thought there was complacency in markets in the wake of US President Trump's tariff announcements. And on that note, thank you very much, everybody, and I'll chat with you all next time. Take care.